Okay, call the roll. Mrs. Shumway?
Here.
Mr. Orndorff? Here. Mr. Gertz?
Here.
First item of business on the agenda, we have Keith McClintock with us from Western Reserve Land Conservancy. Western Reserve Land Conservancy has partnered with us in a number of land acquisitions and given us the opportunity to preserve some different lands around the county. So with a newer board in some regards, Western Reserve, Keith and I had talked about some potential land considerations around the county, and we want Keith to come and present a little bit about Western Reserve, about himself, what the organization does, and he's fortunate that he lives like 3 minutes from here. So, Keith, we'll turn it over to you. I've got a microphone if you need it.
Wonderful. I'll try to speak loud enough to avoid having to use that.
Welcome, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you. And I appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak to you this morning. It's great to see so many friends and happy faces. A bit of nostalgia coming up the walkway this morning. Having done that for 13 years, it's great to be back and being able to present what we do at the Western Reserve Land Conservancy in efforts to help preserve land across our region. The mission run into a wall here. The mission at Western Reserve Land Conservancy is to protect those natural places that help to support vibrant and prosperous communities. We identify properties for protection, restore them, steward those areas, and try to protect them for clean water, working farms, natural areas for wildlife, and for parks. We are a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization that works with individual landowners and with conservation partners in an effort to sustain and to meet this mission. The service area that we work in is rather large. On the west, we work all the way over in the Sandusky area and the Lake Erie Islands, where we've done several projects, all the way across the coast of Lake Erie to the Pennsylvania border. In fact, we're currently working on a piece of property up in the very northeast corner of the state. It's on the Pennsylvania border and right on the lake. And then as far south as Columbiana, Carroll, Stark, Wayne, and Ashland counties. So as you can see, it's a large area for us to cover, and it certainly does keep us running. If you look at the number of properties that we've helped to protect over the years, you can see that there's a concentration, a clustering of projects in the western portion of Geauga County and the eastern portion of Cuyahoga County within the Chagrin River Basin. And that's because the Western Reserve Land Conservancy originally started as the Chagrin River Land Conservancy, where quite a bit of work was done back in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. To date, we've protected about 42,000 acres of land and 560 pieces of property. The Land Conservancy Western Reserve Land Conservancy is a result of a merger of land trusts that took place back in 2006 with the formation of the Chagrin River Land Conservancy with present Firelands Land Conservancy on the western side of the service area over in Erie, Huron, and Lorain County. Headwaters Land Trust, which was in Portage County and southern Geauga County. Hudson Land Conservancy, the Medina Summit Land Conservancy, Portage Land Association, Conservation and Education Place, which covered the majority of Portage County. The very small Bratenaw Land Conservancy right up on the lake, and the Tinkers Creek Land Conservancy, which went through Portage, Summit, and Cuyahoga counties. Since then, we've also merged with the Grand River Partners, which covers Lake, Geauga, and Ashtabula County, and with the Little Beaver Creek Land Foundation, which encompasses Columbiana County and parts of Carroll County. So why is it that we do the work that we do at Western Reserve Land Conservancy? We see that there is a significant need for land protection, in that our urban areas are being abandoned, and as a result, the people from the inner cities are moving to our rural areas within the suburbs. This is resulting in the net loss of agricultural soils and farmland in our open areas. And when we lose these natural areas, we have a decline in water quality. We have fewer people in the region, but more out in the countryside. And the one thing that's oftentimes overlooked is the cost of community services. The fact that it's putting a stress on our tax base. Residential development does not pay for itself, and it results in a net stress to local tax needs. And here we can see, basically for about a 35-year period, from 1976 to 2006, the amount of growth that the region has seen. As you look at 76, we have basically distinct urban areas. Cleveland, Akron, Canton, Youngstown and Warren, and even Mentor. However, in just that short period of time, 35 years, you can see where it's basically morphed into one large urban area, basically encompassing Cleveland, Akron, North Canton, and Canton into one large urban area. The only thing that's really saving that is the pocket of green there between Akron and Cleveland, which of course is the national park, as well as you can see that distinct emerald necklace from the Cleveland Metro Park. And that was all due to the foresight of some very creative thinkers back at the turn of the century. Same thing has happened in Geauga County. If we look at the 25-year period from 1975 to 2000, you can see that the impacts have hit us as well. Quite a bit of change in our development pattern in that short period of time. Bill, of course, you know, and Hamden, seeing all the residential houses that are now lining virtually every street, and many of our farms have been lost to these developments. So how is it that we go about protecting land? First thing we do is to identify those key parcels, those pieces of property that have significant resources that are in need of protection. We then work through various legal instruments to protect the land, such as conservation easements, or through actual acquisitions of property when we work with our conservation partners. And then we look towards the stewardship of the property, in which we actually provide monitoring and protection services for that property into the future in perpetuity. So the basic land protection tools that we use are the donated or purchased conservation easement, and the primary tool there being the donated conservation easement. That makes up about 80% of the work that we do. There's purchasing land for public entities when we partner with organizations like Geauga Park District, any of the metro parks, local municipalities and townships. And then a small portion of the work is through land donations. Once again, as I mentioned, the primary tool that we use is the conservation easement, which is, a couple of essential points. They are voluntary legal agreements. That is basically between the landowner and the land conservancy. And these documents are highly customizable to meet the landowner's needs. If the landowner is a farmer and they want to retain rights to produce food through agricultural crops on the property and possibly even do some timber management, the conservation easement can be modified to allow for that. However, the primary limitation that's placed on the land as a result of the conservation easement is that it permanently limits most development and some of the uses on the property for the protection of conservation and agricultural values. And once again, these are permanent protection tools. These are easements that will be put in place and monitored and protected in perpetuity. The nice thing about it is the landowner retains title and possession of the property, and public access is not a requirement. That is, once again, individual landowners at their discretion. They can reduce income and estate taxes in Geauga County. However, property taxes in Geauga County typically do not get reduced. The auditor has made a strong stand that if a piece of property has CAUV, he will not lower the taxes for that piece of property any lower. So as a result, whenever we place an easement on a piece of property, once again, that property stays on the tax base and it still continues to generate taxes like it always has. So in essence, what is happening is that we're creating these pockets of protection. And quite a bit of the work we do is in the agricultural landscape. So the idea there is to join these pockets of protection to create areas that will allow for the sustainable use of the land for agriculture. As we've seen here in Geauga County with the residential development like we have in Camden, it's very difficult for farmers to stay in business. If you lose enough agriculture, you lose the support industry as well. And at that time, it's very difficult for the existing farmers that remain to stay in business. So as we look at Geauga County in and of itself, the Land Conservancy has worked to protect 18 privately owned farms, 59 privately held conservation easements, and we've worked to help protect 12 public parks and 19 public-owned preservations. And those have primarily been through partnership with Geauga Park District. Out of all the land that we have protected in the county, 62% of that is still in private ownership and is still on the tax record. A couple misconceptions. The Land Conservancy really does not look to own or manage land. Once again, that is left up to the individual landowners. If a conservation easement is placed on the property, or we look for takeout partners, such as our conservation partners as the Park District, local municipalities, local townships. And then we work with private buyers to transfer land from a willing seller to a buyer, and then placing an easement on the property and conserving the land in the process. I want to run through several examples of how we work with our partners and the benefits that we can have in helping to save those partners money. First one is work that we did in 2013 with Cleveland Metro Parks. We purchased a piece of property in Solon known as the Lambert property, and it is adjacent to the South Chagrin Reservation. In fact, it looks like a missing puzzle piece from the Cleveland Metro Parks reservation there. As for Solon, property value is very high. It was a $1.5 million purchase. However, through a couple of years of diligent work, writing grant applications and funding applications, we were able to secure WRRSP funding, which is Water Resource Restoration Sponsorship funding, Clean Ohio, which is the Clean Ohio Conservation Fund, bond money that the state has available for preservation of land, as well as work with individual and private foundations, resulting in being able to raise 83% of that $1.5 million. So as a result, Cleveland Metro Parks was able to get a piece of property that was critical to the expansion of the South Chagrin Reservation for about 17 cents on the dollar. In Medina County, we've done quite a bit of work with Medina County Park District. First one example is the Harrison property that was acquired, 232 acres in 2010. It was a $1.435 million purchase. We were able to raise Clean Ohio funding, some in-kind dollars, which resulted in Medina County Park District only having to pay about 26 cents on the dollar for the acquisition. And then in 2013, we worked with them on the Rivendell property, which is now part of Medina Marsh. And then that example, we were able to raise 100% of the funds for the acquisition of that property through 3 different funding sources. And the NACA fund down there is the North American Waterfowl Conservation Act, some funding that is available with the assistance of Ducks Unlimited. Lorain Metro Parks is another one of our great partners. The director at Lorain Park District is a former Geauga Park District employee, Jim Zimnick. We've worked with him to preserve the Castle property in 2014 and the Royal Oaks property, 97-acre property in 2014. Both of these properties adjacent to existing metro parks, which allowed them to expand and actually connect up some parks. On the first one with the Castle, basically able to raise 92% of the funds, so an 80% contribution was required from the park district, and for Royal Oaks, we were able to raise 75% of the value. Some of our smaller park districts, once again, Ashtabula County Metro Parks, they did not have a levy until last year, so they had very limited funding, as well as Mill Creeks, which have been in some financial situations where they really do not have a budget for land acquisition. In both of these cases, we were able to work with these park districts to secure a couple of pieces of property that they really desired for the protection and for public access for park visitors. The first one in Ashtabula being Lamson Lake, where we were able to raise not only the funds to acquire the property, but also to do a restoration of the failing dam at the Lamson Lake Reservoir. And then Mill Creek, we were able to purchase the Matt Soros property through working out a bargain sale with the owner, where he actually gave up some value of his property and then using Clean Ohio to pay for the balance. Of course, in Geauga Park District, a couple of prime examples. The first one was the Bartman property. It was 87 acres in 2010 that came up for sale. And this has been referred to as the Little Grand Canyon of Burton. It was one of those pieces of property that in one of the early reports to the Park District back over 50 years ago was identified as one of the top 10 parcels in the county in need of preservation. At the time it came available, all but 2 of the properties on that list were acquired. Parkman Gorge being one, still in private ownership, and then the Bartman property. The problem was when it became available, the heirs that inherited the property did not want to split the property. They wanted to sell it as one unit. It included agricultural land and then the natural area, the wooded area that has this beautiful outcropping of the Sheridan conglomerate. The Park District was not able to acquire the property at that time just because of the cost. It would have been nice if the Park District could have bought the property and sold the agricultural land to the neighboring farmer. However, Ohio Revised Code limits how park districts can dispose of property. And it would make it a very difficult and, quite frankly, place the park district at risk for that portion of the property. So at that time, I approached Rich Cochran at Western Reserve Land Conservancy and said, what can you do for the Park District to help preserve this piece of property? We know that a neighboring farmer wants to buy the agricultural land. However, he's in the same boat we're in, and that he cannot afford the entire property. He's only interested in the agricultural portion. So the Land Conservancy entered into a purchase and sale agreement with the sellers. They split the property, sold the agricultural land to the farmer, and then was able to put the remainder of the 60 acres property to the Park District, and were actually able to raise 50% of the funds. So not only was the Park District able to secure the portion that they wanted, they were able to do so at a 50% reduction. Another piece of property was Heritage Acres, which is in Munson Township on the south side of Mayfield Road, just east of Auburn Road. And this was a 38-acre piece of property that the Land Conservancy was actually able to raise 100% of the funds for and transfer it to the Park District. And that was able to be done through one of these economic development grants, as well as splitting the property and once again selling the fine agricultural land to a local farmer. And then the big acquisition, of course, is Orchard Hill. Probably one of the Park District's most heavily used and widely visited parks. Back in 2009, the 209 acres was offered to Western Reserve Land Conservancy and to the Park District. The Pattersons who owned the farm actually had a development company have an offer on the table to buy the property for more than $3.35 million. It was a higher offer. And through working with Western Reserve Land Conservancy and partnering with the Park District, we're able to enter into a purchase and sale agreement and then able to raise funds from Clean Ohio Conservation Fund, the WRRSP program for both acquisition and restoration of the property, a couple of environmental or economic development grants, some direct contributions from Brendel through the State House, a 319 grant through Ohio EPA, which resulted in the Land Conservancy being able to raise and secure 62% of the funds and close to $1 million towards the restoration of the property. So as a result, Park District was able to gain this incredible piece of property in Chesterland for basically 38% of its value. So how do we do this at Western Reserve Land Conservancy, and why is it that we have been so successful over the years? And it's primarily due to the result of the team that has been assembled over the years. We have 4 regional field directors that are actually out in the field meeting with landowners, talking about conservation options, meeting at kitchen tables, meeting out in agricultural fields. These are 4 individuals that just do an incredible job of being able to educate landowners on the work of the Land Conservancy. In some cases, conservation options are for the landowners. In other cases, it's not. And either way, at least we provided some education. We do have one acquisition specialist who has a real estate license, who is great at negotiating deals. We have a 3-person legal team. We have in-house legal. So whenever purchase and sale agreements or any kind of legal agreement is needed, we do not have to go to outside counsel and wait for that turnaround time. It's basically in-house and almost instantaneous. We have a full-time grant writer who is highly successful and very good at putting together these applications. Once again, when you write tens of these applications every year, you learn what the process is, you know what the grant funders are looking for, and it really gives us a leg up. We have 3 in-house project managers, so not only do we acquire when we work for a Park District on an acquisition project, not only do we do the negotiating for the land deal and write the grant, we then actually project manage through the entire grant process, which saves the staff time and headaches for the park districts. We have 3 GIS and conservation planning specialists in-house for mapping needs. We have a 3-person stewardship team, which these are people that are on the ground. They're out visiting properties. Every one of the conservation easements and permanently protected properties is visited at least once a year with actual boots on the ground, and a report is written on an annual basis. We have 1 legislative affairs coordinator. So once again, when we feel that there's a piece of legislation that is critical for securing our communities and preserving our land, we work hard to make sure those policies go through. We have a conservation coordinator and 1 administrator. So once again, this is the team of professionals that when someone comes in to the Park District to partner on a project, they instantly get this full accounting of individuals working very diligently to help them protect the land. So once again, the success to date, we have over 560 properties protected within that region and close to 42,000 acres. If we look at the breakdown of that protected land, only 20% of that land, 8,400 acres, is publicly owned. And that's primarily publicly owned by local park districts. In some cases, it also includes municipalities and townships. However, 80% of that land protected is privately held. Once again, that is land that is still on the tax record, still producing local taxes, and providing peace of mind to the landowners, knowing that their property will not be developed in the future. And of that 80% of the 33,600 acres, 52.5% of it is actually agricultural land. So as you can see, we do quite a bit of work with protecting farmlands. I cannot emphasize enough, though, that one of the most valuable aspects of the work that we do is stewardship, the long-term care of those protected properties. Whenever someone enters into a conservation easement with the Land Conservancy, we do a baseline report. We do an inventory of the property, provide mapping, provide a report, which basically documents the existing conditions. It then sets forward the restrictions on that property and what can and cannot be done. And we make sure that the homeowners are very well educated on those aspects. And as a result, we keep in constant communication with them. Maintaining a good landowner relationship is key. And as I mentioned previously, we provide those annual visits to all properties. And if a landowner has a question, we're happy to go out and meet with them. Another unique aspect of the Land Conservancy provides is terra firma, which is a conservation defense insurance program that we place on every easement, which will help cover legal expenses if there's ever an enforcement issue or a legal action related to the conservation easements. The Land Conservancy has been taken to court in the past with people who try to break conservation easements, and I'm very happy to say that we have a very high, every one has been won. We currently are in the midst of an appeal on one that was previously ruled in favor of Western Reserve Land Conservancy. And courts take this very seriously. The one violation that occurred up in Lake County turned out Western Reserve Land Conservancy, the judge ruled in favor of, and the person that tried to break the conservation easement did so willingly, and as a result had to pay all the legal expenses, which I believe was somewhere between $68,000 and $90,000. So we do take the security of these easements very seriously. So once again, the primary focus of our mission is about the land. We want to make sure that there's green space and agriculture for future generations to enjoy. This is a piece of property that we helped Lake Metro Parks protect. This is the Lake Erie Bluffs, which we had 3 different names for it. That's why it doesn't come right to my head. But once again, this is up in Perry. Just if you've not been there, it's well worth the short drive. It's truly an amazing piece of property, especially right now. So if you're into birds, once again, all the migrating birds, the neotropicals, fly into this area and they rest up here before flying across the lake to further their migration into Canada. Just a wonderful area for viewing. We did a bird walk there last spring, and I believe we had 18 eagles at one time soaring above us. Just an incredible piece of property. And when you work your way down to the beach, the coast there, you really can only see a couple of signs of development. One is a pier far to the west, but other than that, it looks like an undisturbed coastline. You would have a hard time not realizing, thinking that you were on the coast of Oregon. It is truly spectacular. And then, our primary focus is about the people. It's helping individuals realize their dreams. So many people, if you think about what's important to them and their families, it's family, faith, and land. And when you can help them to preserve land, it really does get to you. You help to see how important making sure that their children and grandchildren have those areas to recreate and to enjoy in the future. So with that, I would be happy to address any questions. Yes?
I don't know what the protocol is here.
No, I just asked if the board, nobody on the board has any questions, but go ahead.
Well, in terms of mentioning names, I know sometimes in meetings you want people's names, so I'm still clear. Hi. One quick question for you.
Yes.
Because there is a distinct difference between protection and control. If the citizens have paid tax dollars for the park board to purchase property, the park board protects that property. Nobody can do anything on that property unless the park board approves it, authorizes it, whatever. 100 years from today, the nature of our country will change, and at some point in time, somebody may say, in 100 years, we want something different for that property. If there is a in perpetuity contract controlling the property, which we had to pay more tax dollars to do, why would we do that?
Because the reason people vote for levies for John Park District has largely been to protect land. That is their desire and their expectation that that's going to be protected in the future. If we work to help save taxpayer money with the park district, say for example Heritage Acres, where we were able to raise 100% of the funds, then you have to give up something. By getting a free piece of property, you're placing a permanent restriction on it.
That didn't answer the question why, if the park board owns property, they need you to protect it. They protect it. And 100 years from today, our generation says, we value this property, we want to protect it. And
Park District owns Big Creek Park.
Right.
They can do whatever they want with it. There's some state restrictions because part of the land is subsidized by the state. However, the Land Conservancy doesn't have an easement on this property. We're not going to dictate what's done on the majority of parklands.
Yeah, but you do have contracts on park property. You've already said that.
Yes, on those properties.
And why would we put a contract? Why? And I'm saying this to the park board. Why would we ever put a conservation easement on a property? Because the values in the population changes over time. And today we value whatever we value. What right do we have to steal the decisions away from future generations for what's right in their day and in their time? we're dictating to future generations what's right in their day and their time. Why would we do that?
Once again, for savings, a piece of property is desired, we want to provide public open space at a fraction of the cost. That's one of the options that we provide, and as a result, a restriction comes with that. And that's something that the board has to weigh. Mike.
Hi, Keith. Mike Sullivan, Chester. Keith, one of the problems that bothers me is you talk about Clean Ohio. That's bond money. That's state money that the taxpayers pay. WRSP grants and 319 grants are also funded by state taxes.
WRSP is not a grant program.
Well, it's money owed back to EPA from the loan they made for the Northeast Regional Sewer District.
Right, but it's not a grant program.
Well, it's profit because we loan the money. The taxpayers loan the money for that. So it should be the return on investment to the taxpayers.
It's basically the savings that a municipality or a sewer district, for taking out a loan, they get a reduction in their interest rate. The money from that reduction is placed towards water quality protection projects. It's not a
Well, I think it's kind of disingenuous to say that you raise these funds because everybody in this room that pays taxes, it's our money to start off with.
which was voted in by the same individuals to put it in place. Clean Ohio was voted on twice by voters.
And but it's taxpayer funded. It's bond money. We have to pay
By
back.
vote.
We have to pay back the taxpayers at an interest rate. So that was my comment about the presentation. I just don't understand.
Once again, that's money that's available. My thought is, if that money is available, District 7 covers Lake County, Ashtabula County, Geauga County, and Portage County. That money is being spent in those 4 counties. I want to see it come to Geauga County. I want to see it come to where I live. That's my personal bias as a township trustee in Handa and as a resident. And also for working with Western Reserve Land Conservancy.
Yeah, but at what price for future generations? That's the question.
At the price of clean water, reserve land, protection of our aquifers, I would say it's a price that's well worth it.
I think that's it.
Keith, can you address us on what parcels there might be currently in Geauga that might be of interest to the Park District?
We do have 3 pieces of property that I would certainly be willing to discuss with the Park Board. However, I feel that it's appropriate in executive session and that with any land deal, it's one of those it's a reason why there's executive sessions allowed for park districts and public bodies, and that oftentimes deals can go south if too much information is shared.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Are you going to stick around? I can, yes.
The other items are pretty limited, Keith, so it should not take long.
Very, very short.
Yeah, very short. So let's move on. There are 2 other items of business on the agenda. First is Headwater Park improvement. I'll let Matt Ford come forward and fill in any details that I overlook. But if you recall, we bid some improvements at Headwaters Park. The bids came in over the estimate of the probable cost. And so Matt and his team put it back out to bid. And we have some options here for you that you saw in your board packet for moving forward with a contract for improvements at Headwaters Park. Matt and I both concur with option number 3. The other thing you can consider as well, if you'd like to see a little more savings and some contingency available, Matt, particularly that's right around a 10% contingency for sort of change orders, change directions, things of that nature. There's been a lot of discussion about these playgrounds and what they cost. The costs are exorbitant, so that's something else you could, as a board, could remove from the project just because it is a separate contract. So Matt and I will concur on option 3, and I'll let Matt add anything to that.
So, yeah, John kind of covered. Basically, we had the three different options. Option 3 really gives us kind of the original intent. We're able to build the shelter. You can see from the two graphics I gave you that the north elevation shows the original covered porch area that would come off the front of the shelter, which is actually oriented towards headwaters. The lower elevation shows the base bid without that porch. Based on the intent and sort of the site and sort of the beauty of that area, I think having the porch makes sense. That option would be at least eliminating one piece of equipment from the playground, which then would allow us to do that add alternate of the porch, which to me I think is kind of a good direction to go. The other thing mentioned would be the clearing on the site would be done by operations crew. It's really a matter of probably 6 or 7 trees to clear for the playground area and for where the restroom would go. And then the other item we would be self-performing would be some aggregate trails, which are basically 6-foot wide aggregate trails kind of to the shelter, which our operations crew are currently working on a number of trail projects, so it's well within kind of their skill set.
I just had a question to ask you in regards to the opportunity John put forth as far as, I think everyone's clear, in case I'm wrong, is that we understand that this project with the roof and the north side elevation is to really, really enhance the canoe, kayak experience at Headwaters. And so my question is, to me it's obvious to remove part of the playground. The question is whether or not we want to remove all the playground, and I think that would be based on the recommendation of you and John to see how this goes forward. Or do you think this is, you all know better than we do, a populated area, or in fact the playground is going to be used as much as Orchard Hills is used?
The playground originally, the thought being that with camping and with some of the other amenities there, that having a playground would make sense for this location. That again was under previous board members. I know at least one member of this board has brought up kind of thoughts on playgrounds. If we did not do the playground, it's similar to what we discussed at Freund Meadows. It's something that can always be added back in if we feel there is a huge need in the future. Again, looking at the setting and the site itself, it's pretty natural. So by eliminating the playground, it kind of lends itself to maybe sort of give a nice setting for the lodge, which again, the intent was to kind of take advantage of the location of the existing boathouse right along the lake there. So from a planning standpoint, if we don't do it now, it's something that could easily be added in. It is a separate contract, as John said. It was through straight bid, so it'd be a matter of going back to the supplier at any time and saying, we want to add this in later.
And that would free up our funding so we'd stay within budget?
Well, by reallocating and eliminating the turtle, that gives us enough money to stay in budget. If you eliminate the other piece, the actual ship, that would free up another $82,000 that, as John stated, usually we like to carry about a 10% contingency in construction. Right now we have about a 2% contingency on this project with reallocating the money from eliminating one piece. So if we did eliminate the other piece, it would give us the ability to give more of a normal contingency going into construction.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I would like to move that we remove the complete playground.
I'm not surprised.
And we can always bid it later. But, I'm a little bit conservative, and to spend $100,000 on playground, on playing equipment, it doesn't make sense.
$80,000.
Well, yeah, but you're taking a turtle out there for $18,000. A turtle? Come on, folks.
Jeff, any comments?
No comments.
So,
I would need at this time, we would need a motion, and Dave Andre, Jeff, did review the original bid form, and option 3, any of the options would be within the board's right. Option 3, though, I would need a motion from the board to move forward with awarding the contract to Hummel.
Okay. So all you need from us now is a motion to go ahead and award the bid to Hummel.
For the amount of $346,930, which would include the reallocation of $18,000 from the playground.
So,
And in connection with our prior board meeting where we approved the playground equipment, then we would be reversing ourselves on that, correct?
correct.
Yeah, that would be a separate motion.
That would be a
I would
separate.
recommend making a separate motion.
Yeah, so we'd like, the first motion is strictly for the building, no playground included. So that would be to approve Hummel construction contract for the construction of the shelter for the amount of $346,930, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And option 3 includes eliminating the one piece of the turtle, and that's the option you're recommending.
That would be the recommendation from planning.
That's correct. We have a motion, we have a second. I'll go and call the roll. Mrs. Shellmeyer?
Did we have a second on that motion? I did not hear a second.
No, we didn't.
Okay, okay. So
I'm sorry.
are you clear with the motion?
No, I'm not clear with the motion. Are we just, is the motion to...
The motion was to award Hummel construction contract for the construction of the shelter. So we're speaking shelter only in the amount of $346,930.
And then to reduce the playground scope by eliminating...
Well, we're not talking the playground at all.
But that's what's shown in option 3.
I was going to say, option 3, because we would have to self-perform.
Okay, so are you asking then for the motion that option 3 that we move forward?
That's
with
what
that?
That's what I thought that you were moving, and that Bill seconded, is that we were accepting option 3 as it's articulated in the recommendation from Matt.
Okay. I want
Is
to be
that
clear.
correct?
Option 3 includes the
Right.
playground.
Now, we'll take care of the playground after this is voted on.
It includes the playground to the extent of eliminating one piece.
Correct. So you wouldn't make the motion to go forward with the playground.
Let's back up the tape.
We have to legally go.
Don't we want to say that you're making a motion to accept the staff's recommendation for option 3 to award Hummel Construction for the construction of the shelter and add alternate 1, the covered porch on the north elevation, for a total cost of $346,930, and that includes with it that the staff will perform clearing, grading, and trail work, that we're reducing the playground scope by eliminating one piece, saving $18,000, and then we would reallocate $18,000 from the playground budget for the construction of the shelter. Is that the motion? Are you content with that
No,
motion?
I'm not satisfied with that, because I think we should eliminate the playground equipment completely from our bid.
Yeah, but if I'm understanding John correctly, he's saying that with regard to the balance of the playground equipment, he wants us to do that in a separate motion.
Okay.
So is that then, can you accept the way that the staff has articulated it on this sheet? Whose motion is it?
It's Bill's.
Bill's motion, and you seconded it.
I will second it. That we accept option number 3.
I'll call
As articulated in the
Correct.
report there.
I'll call the roll. Mrs. Shellmeyer?
Vote yes.
Mr. Wondorf?
Yes.
Mr. Durst?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, now, you have a second motion.
Second motion is to eliminate completely from the bid all the playground part of our bid, which was an amount of $100,000.
It's 80,000.
It will be 82,000.
So we're rescinding our prior motion and action made March. I'm sorry, I can't remember the date that we did that, but you know what date that was.
I think the motion might be to not accept the contract that was awarded at the
To rescind the board's prior motion.
Correct.
Is that's Bill's motion?
Yep. For the playground. Correct.
I'll second.
Call the vote. Mrs. Shellman?
Yes.
Mr. Warndorf?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on. Thank you for your patience, folks. There's an agenda item for controlled hunting. Mr. Warndorf was able to come in and meet with us on Monday, us meeting myself and our park biologist, Paul Pira. We were able to provide him information on the history of our wildlife management controlled hunting program. And so I'd open the floor to any comments or any questions regarding the controlled hunting program.
John, what I would like more than anything is for Paul, if you would be so kind to come and talk to us about the nature of the surveys that can be done, what surveys have been done in the past, and what surveys you might recommend or have us consider for the future, please.
And the other thing is, I just want to make it really clear that the hunting was somewhat thrown in with trapping. The issues that were raised at previous board meetings were trapping issues, not necessarily hunting issues. Hunting issues have been issues with certain residents since its inception.
Well, there's an awful lot that we did talk about. I think we spent about an hour and a half talking about hunting, trapping issues over the years. I think we first started out with general consensus, I think, amongst everyone. Anyone that's conservation-minded and knows about the issues, I don't think we're in disagreement about high deer numbers and deer populations that are high. And things that need to be done as far as maintaining biodiversity in that regard. So we talked a little bit about that. I talked about my involvement with a group called LEAP in Northeast Ohio, Lake Erie Allegheny Partnership. And we have helped and assisted as kind of the experts in the region, a number of other municipalities. I'm sure you've read some of the newspapers and things like that are now starting deer management, culling, and things like that in their areas. So we discussed a little bit of that. For the Park District, we started, John started this program back in 2004-05, discussions, and then we went from there and actually started running a hunting program in 2006. Again, in regards and with the mind of deer management and managing for biodiversity and the protection of plants and animals in the Park District. So we went through that. We discussed kind of options on what has been done in the past as far as deer numbers, getting population estimates.
Could you briefly discuss what options that have been used or that we could use going forward?
Sure. Exactly. That's what I was going to touch on. So we've used in the past, we've used infrared aerial surveys from planes. And most of the other park districts in this region do the same thing. We haven't done one for quite some time, but basically they fly in the wintertime and the heat signatures of these animals, they pick those up on infrared cameras from the planes, and then we come up with numbers of deer per square mile. And any estimates, any kind of sampling you do in biology has bias. And certainly this technique has some bias. We also discussed doing surveys through the use of helicopters. It's been offered to the Park District through an agency to possibly do that, so that there's an option of using helicopters in the wintertime to get deer numbers. There are other estimates as well, not so much specific numbers on the number of deer, but more or less the intensity or damage that deer inflict upon the habitat. So you can do, my department, Natural Resource Management, the biologists, we could go out and do browse surveys, kind of the intensity, how badly are deer impacting the vegetation in Big Creek Park versus Observatory Park or down in Swine Creek Park, something like that. So we could go out and do those kind of surveys. So those options were discussed with Mr. Orndorff.
And in the materials that you shared with me, for which I'm grateful, there was a reference to BioBlitz, and BioBlitz would refer to that last survey method that you described, where you would look at vegetation, correct? Is that what that means?
No, but to me anyway, BioBlitz for the Park District is actually, it's like a one-day program where we bring out experts in various fields of birds or plants or fish or whatever, and we all kind of collectively blitz a piece of property and come up with numbers of species, upwards of 800 to 900 species we'll document on a piece of property in 24 hours.
So the vegetation survey and the aerial surveys, whether they're done by plane or helicopter, Paul, can you tell us what time of year those are done?
Yeah, typically it's always done in the winter months when snow is on the ground, January, February.
That's for the airplane and helicopter one?
Correct.
And what about the vegetation survey?
Vegetation, the browse intensity kind of studies are actually done right after snow comes off, so March would be the time to do those.
So are we already too late in trying to evaluate our white-tailed deer population to do anything prior to this year's hunting season?
I would say yes, in my opinion. Right now we're kind of too late for the browse surveys. The other thing I did want to mention too, and we discussed this, was we have deer exclosures, basically 30 by 30 fenced-in areas, and it's been interesting to look at visually in certain parks. They show some pretty, they can show dramatic changes. Maybe not even in Geauga Park District. Other park districts have shown me photos, and it's pretty striking the impacts of inside versus outside of this fenced-in area. But it's at best, I will say, looking at our data over the years, and I've produced one short report on it. It's kind of tricky to interpret some of that data. There are other factors involved in vegetation, inside and outside, and then comparing between parks is often difficult because they're not placed in exactly the same kind of habitats and things like that. So,
do you have any preliminary thoughts that you can share with us today about updating our baseline data on population densities?
So, yeah, I mean, I guess what I brought from that meeting, John and Mr. Warnbrook, was basically I would come up with in the next few weeks, we come up with some options of what we would recommend going forward. I don't see getting some data, again, baseline data, updated data as a bad thing for the Park District. I'm looking into, we talked about maybe getting some money, some budget numbers as far as those estimates go.
I do have a question, Paul.
Sure.
I know you were offered infrared through the Chagrin Falls National Guard unit to come in and help you do some counts in some of the parks. Have you taken advantage of any of that free infrared versus us paying $5,000?
No, I have not. I haven't contacted them. We could certainly talk. I don't know kind of what capabilities they have, really.
Well, they're the same capabilities they use for finding the guys in Afghanistan. I think they could find deer in our park.
Okay. Well, we certainly can explore that option.
Okay.
Is there anything that you think that we can do as a board to update our baseline data prior to the things that we have in place, the Park District has in place for white-tailed deer hunting for the 2014-15 hunting season?
15,
I'm sorry,
2015-16.
2015-16.
Right.
Pardon me.
Sure. The Department of Natural Resource Management, we can go out and every year about this time of year we will go out and look at our deer exclosures. So we will go out and collect some of that data. And then just, as we're walking pieces of property, we could even go out and look at some of the browse intensity and make kind of notes.
If I understand you correctly, you believe that that's pretty limited and has a very significant scientific margin of error. Is that correct?
Deer exclosures?
Yes.
Yes.
You do understand the overhead survey has significance in this law, too.
Yes, I understand that from
They could
talking
be
with,
picking up coyotes.
with Paul. I am understanding that when we're doing this infrared thing that we're not only picking up white-tailed deer, we would pick up people, coyotes, large, perhaps large dogs, a number of things. Yeah. I have no further questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's very helpful.
Okay, did anyone have, Skip, it looked like you had a question.
I did.
So Paul.
Yes.
Would you mind?
No.
Okay, I don't know.
Go back up. I'm fine. That's fine.
I find this discussion very fascinating. I happen to be a hunter. I grew up hunting, grew up on a farm, pretty familiar with concepts involved here. I find the science that we're trying to get to kind of mind-numbing. As a professional, somebody who, how long have you been in the
How long have I been here at this point?
No, resource management generally.
How long have I've been a research biologist for over 20 years.
Okay, so in your judgment, I would think that you would have the common sense gut feel for whether a deer population is large, small, or not, whether or not the browsing is over-browsing in saplings and so on and so forth. And so in your judgment, is our deer population small, medium range, large, and what would you recommend relative to hunting? If you were just as a natural resource person, I mean, I can tell you what the deer population is in my backyard, and I can tell you they're eating up with all the saplings, and I'm going to be trimming a couple of them.
Right.
And so, what is your judgment on this?
I agree. I mean, I don't think there's any professional biologist out there that's going to argue and say that deer numbers are low around here. They're certainly high.
If I did understand you correctly, he feels that when I spoke with him the other day, he was saying that there's significant variation in the parks. For example, Swine Creek has a lower...
There are. I mean, there are certainly areas within the county, yes, and thanks for pointing that out, but yeah, we have lower numbers, areas, as you kind of indicate, where there are quite a few the hunting community down in Middlefield area. It's very popular down there to hunt, so deer numbers down there are quite a bit lower, dramatically lower than say over in Bainbridge area or something.
Well, generally speaking, it's DNR in the hunting's perspective, and I've hunted for, I don't want to tell you how many decades now. Generally, the DNR has used their judgment and said, okay, in this area, the deer population is XYZ, this is what we're going to call this year the population, rule of thumb. They've not gone out and done science. Infrared technology is relatively new. Mm-hmm. And I think that's worked pretty well. I don't know why we're going through all this complicated mental gymnastics relative to this topic. I don't understand. So just for as a taxpayer and somebody who supports the parks, I'm probably the biggest resource or environmentalist in this room. I've supported environmental activities in my entire life. So,
I mean, I'm going to agree with you to a certain extent. I mean, but there are obviously in order to intelligently talk about it with the public or anyone else, I think we need some data. I personally think we need some data, some basis, some foundations for speaking.
Just to be clear, so the data will help you target which parks you want to take more deer out of and which parks you need to take fewer deer out of. Is that true?
I think that's possible.
Which parks need to have deer taken out of them at all?
Correct. Yes.
Let me comment on one thing. I own property in Hamden Township, and I have currently 125 acres. We've owned it since 1953. And the deer population today is as strong or stronger than it's ever been. All of my plowland now goes into hay because you can't grow corn anymore, you can't grow beans because of the turkeys. And always remember that even though you might have the deer on your property, they're coming from someplace else. You can't control that part. So what I do, I have about a half a dozen hunters that I've known for years. We set them out at certain places so I know where they're at. You don't wander around. Nobody gets hurt. But I'd like to see so many deer taken a year. You have to. Because at one time, I don't know if you folks remember back, Twinsburg had a little earthquake. It was probably 20 years ago. And both of my sons live on the farm. They have really nice houses back off the old pasture. My daughter-in-law called me and she said, Dad, you'll never believe what I've just seen. The middle fields that were open have 100 deer standing. My son was there and he said, I counted them. They're just standing in it, whether they knew something was going to happen or had happened. But it was unbelievable. And at any time, you can find deer all over our place. And of course, the hunting area is just to the one side. So I would strongly urge that we look at that area. If we take it from the state, that'd be fine.
Bill, I volunteer to take a couple of those deer for you.
Pardon?
If you need somebody, I'll certify and then I'll go out and
I'll take your name. I'd be glad to. But I've tried to control this. In fact, the first year we had a season, which back, I think probably 54, we took 10 bucks off the farm. 10. We had people coming from Napoleon, Ohio, all over the place, and it was. But right now, I'd say there's as many deer as I've ever seen.
So going forward, Paul, you're going to have some numbers and some presentation for us in May at the board meeting. And we're specifically talking about hunting white-tailed deer.
Only.
Correct.
At this time.
Right. We have never ever hunted fox or some of the other animals that people have.
So the staff recommendation, if I'm understanding correctly, is that we would continue our white-tailed deer hunting program with all the previous restrictions and so forth that are in place. And then we anticipate considering what measures should be taken to determine, as necessary, the biological carrying capacity of our various parks.
Correct.
For white-tailed deer.
Paul, you'll have your
Is that
proposal
fairly
in May.
stated?
Yeah, I can certainly have, again, some proposal for you. Yeah, we can discuss it again.
Okay.
Okay.
So next would be a motion to go into executive session in regards to land acquisition.
Also,
Second.
And at that time, I know it's not specifically on the agenda, but Keith, I'd like to include you, and we could possibly talk about your lands previous to this other property.
Please. Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Mrs. Shumlin?
Vote yes.
Mr. Warndorf?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
yes.
Do you guys anticipate any action